Hi, my name is Julie Gilley. I am the Senior Financial Analyst with the Entrepreneurial Accelerator Program. I know that you just learned about Executive Summary page, and so now I'm going to spend a little time and teach you how to actually present all of that information. So we're going to go through actually how you develop your pitch deck, what's in it, and how to present that. So the first slide, you're going to actually present the company name. I'd highly suggest you use a logo if you have one, and then any kind of tagline that you might have. So you can use other presentation formats other than PowerPoint, but I would suggest that less words is better. You really want to try to create a visual, and the whole purpose of this is to tell the story. You do need to include the 16 essential elements of an effective pitch deck, which you should have been provided. And don't edit this PowerPoint deck. You actually should use another template. Speaking of templates, you can actually go to slidecarnival.com and you can get a ton of different templates that you could download. Aesthetics does matter, so you really do want it to look good. Okay, so slide number 1, you want to go through your company purpose, your vision, and if you have a mission. This is really your first chance to get in there and explain to them what it is you're doing. You want this to really make an impact. If you have any kind of a picture of your product or maybe the industry, it would be a great place to display that on the first page. So then immediately jump into the problem. So the whole point of this is you identified a problem, and then you're going to eventually tell them how your product or service is going to solve it. So right here you want to describe the current situation, maybe it's the current market or the current environment, but be sure that you really detail the problem in the most concise way possible so that it really grabs the audience. If you have any other maybe facts or figures that support this problem, you might want to put them on this slide as well. So then immediately jump into the solution. So you've told them what the problem is, but now you really want to take some time and tell you how does your product or service solve this problem. Visuals are great here. If you can show a picture of your product, if you can show maybe the process of how it solves the problem. This is really a great time to explain why they absolutely need your product or service. Then go ahead and jump into all the details of your product or service. Maybe all of the benefits that it offers, or maybe all of the different features in the product. This is a great place. Again, visuals really help here. During the presentation of your PowerPoint or of your pitch deck, you'll actually be able to talk through it, but don't read off the slides. So if you've got bullet points on here about all the different features or benefits, it's good to summarize them, but as you're actually giving the pitch, don't read off the deck. Then you want to go into your market. So it's really important that you've measured the market for your industry. This shows that there actually is the possibility that you could sell it to those people out there. So you want to talk about the entire market, but then you want to talk about how much you plan to capture. You know, the reality is that we'd all think that we could capture $1 million industry and capture all of it, but you might only be able to capture about 5%. So be realistic in your projections, but here's a good time to really go through all of the market analysis that you've done. Then you want to talk about how did you validate a lot of your assumptions? Did you do any surveys? Did you get any industry reports out there? What have you done to validate that your product or service is actually needed and that people will actually pay for it? SurveyMonkey is a great place and a great way to go out and survey the audience, maybe your potential market, get some of that feedback, and then display your results on this slide. Your business model. This is a really good way to show the audience how do you plan to make money. And what I mean is, are you going to be selling just your product? Are you going to be selling a product and a service that tags along to that product? It's really important that you explain how your company is structured on this particular slide. The next thing is competition. I assure you that every time we hear somebody say, I don't have any competition, we all kind of giggle because then we Google it and 9 times out of 10 we find something that's very similar. So do your homework. Google is your friend. Go out there and actually research your industry, your product, your service that you're pitching about, and make sure that you have looked at all the competition that's out there. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great. Competition is not a bad thing. The biggest point, though, is you want to take time to focus on how are you different? How are you different from the competition? So this is a great place. You can even put your competitors' logos here and maybe a brief description of what they do. So this may not apply to all presentations, but many companies now, as they're forming, they actually have some form of community impact. Some way that they give back to the community, some way that they are truly impacting the community. If that applies to you in your scenario, this is a great place to actually highlight that. You really want to point that out. And then marketing and your growth strategy. So we've talked about the market itself and what is the potential of that entire market, but how are you going to reach that market? That's marketing. So on this slide, you can talk about, are you going to use social media? Are you going to use ads, advertisements, billboards, commercials? Just list all of the different ways you plan to actually reach your market. And then if you have any history of events of how marketing has impacted that group, this would be a good place to actually put all of that in there. Team. Don't forget to go through who is on your team. Now, this doesn't mean just you. If you've had any advisors along the way, get their permission first, of course, but please list them on here. All that's going to do is add more credibility to your actual presentation. And in these boxes, it's really great to put pictures. If all the pictures weren't taken at the same time, one little trick is you can make them black and white, and then they all look very similar, and it kind of flows a little bit better. Financials. Now, this is a scary slide for many people because financials do get a little bit tricky, but get some help, and I believe Nick already went through all of the financial stuff. This is a good slide to actually put a summary of the charts, specifically what your costs are going to be and what your revenue would be over time. You can kind of see that picture on this slide. And you can see on the break-even point, that's a good thing to point out, especially on a timeline, so that you can show your audience, this is about the time I'm predicting when my revenue will outpace my expenses. Just put a summary on here, and any other charts or breakdown of all of your costs would be good. Now, this is a big slide. This is really important. What are you asking for? If you are pitching to an investor, what do you need? Do you need $250,000? If so, how are you? What are the terms of what you're asking for? So if you're asking for $250,000, how much? What percentage of your company is that actually buying? You need to put all those details on this slide. And then finally, and you might be able to combine this slide with the previous one. You want to detail out the use of funds. So let me go back for just a second. If you're asking for $250,000, you want to break it down and actually go through what are you going to spend that $250,000 on? Is it going to be marketing? Is it going to be actually prototyping your product? Anything like that. Really important here. So to kind of summarize, the biggest thing is use less words and don't read off the slides. You want to make sure that you tell the story. It needs to be visually appealing, it needs to be very concise, and it needs to get your point across. Finally, on your last slide, put your logo again and thank the audience for listening to your presentation. That about wraps it up. Thanks.